And it's all about those little moments, and for the vast majority of us never actually personally met the Queen. But in a way that doesn't matter. Jill says, I'm feeling so emotional today. I've known nothing other than a life with our Queen. She visited Romford in 2003 and her car drove past my door. She looked directly at me and my sons and her smile just radiated warmth and affection, and they remember it to this day.
She had a brilliant smile. Her whole face lit up, didn't it? Because sometimes she could look quite sombre, and then she'd smile and that was just magic.
With a twinkle. She had a definite
she had a very definite
in her
twinkle.
eye.
Yeah, she was mischievous, I think. Yeah.
Okay, shall we have a look at some of the newspapers?
Yes, let's have a look at the front pages, right, shall we? In the Telegraph, grief is the price we pay for love. That's what she said, isn't it?
The Daily Mail says, our hearts are broken.
In the Times, there's the Guardian, a simple photograph and a simple testimony, but beautiful picture.
Let's have a look at the Times. A life in service for Queen Elizabeth. Death of the Queen, it says.
In the Express, our beloved Queen is dead.
The Mirror today says simply, thank you.
I like that. And the Sun says, we loved you, ma'am.
Well, joining us this morning is former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor, and Royal Broadcaster Rafe Edel-Mancu. Good to see you both this morning. Certainly, David, you must have had a lot of interactions with Her Majesty over the years, especially your time in government.
I did, and had the opportunity of seeing close up how professional and efficient she was. Sadly, never had anything that would amount to a proper conversation, but she was always very polite and nice, and was radiated effectiveness and efficiency, which was what you want. But it's interesting, by the way, just looking through the papers, is that how much better the tabloids are than the broadsheets at capturing it. I mean, the Daily Star, you did your duty, Mark, that sums it up. The Mirror, thank you. The Express, our beloved Queen is dead. But when you get to the broadsheets, it's all a bit more pompous. I mean, it's very clever to say, grief is the price we pay for love, said the Queen. But I'm not sure I quite get that. Do you? I mean,
Oh, I think so, yes.
Yeah, I get that.
And a life in service, yes. I just think that at this point, the tabloids reach out better and sum it all up, and that's after all
are they
what they're
connected to the people.
probably.
I don't know. I think the front page of the Financial Times of all papers does it rather well. Just hold that one up. It's just that beautiful, sort of colorised picture. And it, I don't know, for a big broadsheet newspaper, I think they've done a sort of tabloid job there. It looks rather lovely.
And it's interesting to see the Sun. I mean, the Sun gave the Queen such a terrible time for quite a number of years of her reign. So I don't know whether that means they sign off being nice and will then go back to start unpicking things. I mean, it's a turning point in a way that I think is going to be quite troubling for the monarchy, potentially. But we'll see.
Rafe, what's your favourite front page, do you think?
Well, for me, it's the classic Cecil Beaton coronation photograph of the Queen, which is iconic. And actually, with the exception of the Financial Times, all of the front pages choose to immortalise the Queen in one of two modes, either as the great matriarch of the family and of the nation as we know her today, or as that young, innocent princess who had just become Queen. And those are our two iconic images of the Queen that we have. And we have to remember, the Queen is the most photographed person in history. Her image has been represented more than anybody else. If you think of all the coins, all the banknotes, not just here, but in Canada and Australia and around the Commonwealth. And we've seen her on these from the age of 25 to today. And when people say that they are so moved and they don't understand why they're so profoundly shocked, it's because she reaches into every aspect of our lives, from the stamps to the pillar boxes that she use.
I mean, she has been just such a constant. I mean, by the very nature of the length of her reign, it seems it's incredibly difficult just to get our heads round the fact that she is no longer here.
Well, if you think about it, the monarchy has been around for around 1,000 years. The The Queen's reign covered 1/10 of that. That's absolutely remarkable. For better or worse, we like to view history, we tend to view history, our collective history, in terms of centuries. The Queen has been, of course, Queen for 70 years, but she's been part of our life for 100 years. She's indelibly linked to all of the major events, the triumphs and the tragedies. She's the last person who connects us to the Second World War. We have to remember she was actually on the balcony
And isn't
in
it
uniform.
There's something very, very important about that, isn't there?
Oh,
The fact that she wore uniform and did a job in the war.
And the fact that the royal family was there for the people during the war and weren't skipping off somewhere safe. But I think when one looks, I mean, okay, we're not invited to offer an award for the best front page. But I never thought I'd hear myself saying it, but I think that Daily Star one captures it, because it's a wonderful picture of a young woman in her prime, Cecil Beaton, as you say. And, you know, you did your duty, Mom. Well, that's it, isn't it? That's it. That's what she did. And heaven knows when we'll ever see her like again.
It's interesting, isn't it? I always balk slightly at the talk of servants to the nation, because I mean that applies to politicians as well, and you wonder quite how that applies. When it comes to her, though, she really has served the nation like no other.
And I think it's what, you know, I was obviously spent a bit of time thinking about Meghan, and my phone was red hot for a couple of hours yesterday afternoon when people thought she was going to go up there. But anyway, but the point is...
It was a worry, wasn't it?
It was. But Meghan's view of royalty is all glamour and gloss. The Queen's view of royalty was service. There's nothing I mean, the number of times in my 11 years as a minister, I went out with senior royals on visits to far-flung parts of the country, often to quite distressing and depressing and difficult hospitals and things like that. There was nothing glamorous about that, but the fact that they went was a focal point to bring some joy into the lives of people who didn't have a lot of joy in their lives otherwise, you know?
I think that's very important, actually. The Queen was able to transition the monarchy from being an imperial monarchy to a post-imperial monarchy. Sometimes we call it the welfare monarchy. She steered it away from the glitzy celebrity causes that you see, for example, in Hollywood, and she went out and made the monarchy engage with the unsung heroes of Britain. People working in soup kitchens, volunteers, St. John's Ambulance. The unsexy causes got glamour and attention from the presence and the involvement of the monarchy, and she became, I think, through that, a supreme moral leader and a champion of self-sacrifice, service, duty, and civic duty, importantly, and a sense of bringing together an idea of social cohesion.
Yeah, but she didn't even do it during the pandemic, and she did it by Zoom. I'll never get over that. She actually was comfortable doing that, wasn't she? I tell you what, I don't know if we can zoom in on this, but I find that profoundly moving. It's in the middle of the Mail. These sort of official portraits, and she's now in that lineup of Elizabeth I, Queen Victoria, and Elizabeth II. In very similar posed shots. That really places her in history, doesn't it?
What was said just now about the change, you know, when you look at some of the old newsreels of things that she said as a young woman, our imperial family, and it is remarkable how they were able to change that message to something far more personal and far more profound in terms of its service to the community.
And it's interesting on that front, Rafe, isn't it? When we look back at Alistair's wonderful reflection on her reign, that she instigated the first ever royal walkabout, something that we almost expect now.
True.
Something she brought about.
There's some debate there. Many people think it was her mother who did it in Ottawa, which was in 1939. She walked about, so there's some debate. But yes, it was that idea of proximity. You think of the monarchs of the past, there was this very, very austere nature to them and a distance, but there was always a warmth from the Queen. She was very selfless and unaware of herself as well, and that put people at ease.
And one forgets it's actually quite a brave thing to plunge into a crowd of people. And however many security men you've got around you, it doesn't safeguard you from the odd passing lunatic. And when you look at, certainly in India, where they've had a number of notable assassinations close up of leaders walking in crowds, we sometimes forget, but shouldn't, there is no shortage of risk of being a leading member of the royal family, but they do it gladly. And I hope what we're going to see today is the beginning of a process where the love and respect for the Queen translates itself into her successor and maybe one or two of the others. I mean, one or two members of the royal family are irredeemable, but there are others there is the chance to make sure that the love and respect that was granted to the Queen does translate. If it doesn't, there's real problems for the monarchy.
And of course, that is what she wanted. I mean, she's made that quite clear, particularly over the last 12 to 18 months or so, Rafe. I mean, she has known about her own mortality, and she has tried to get that all set in place, hasn't she?
Yes, I mean, you see that first and foremost with the Prince of Wales taking on more of the responsibilities of state, but also, of course, with the Queen expressing her wish and desire that the then Duchess of Cornwall, now the Queen Consort, would be known as the Queen Consort under the common law. If you are the wife of the King, you are the Queen Consort. That's a matter of fact. Much as she was actually Princess of Wales for her entire marriage too. But the Queen's great legacy is the fact that the monarchy is in such rude health. I mean, if you go back to where we were in the 1990s at its nadir, and you think that people thought there would never be any outpouring of support at the Golden Jubilee, for example, and people came out in their droves, and then for the Diamond Jubilee. And the Platinum Jubilee was almost the Queen's last legacy for the monarchy to actually show how strong the affection of the public is for this institution.
And one forgets the number of attempts on Queen Victoria's life. She was not popular for most of her
That's
reign.
right, yeah. But that's because she didn't come out to the people.
Yeah.
She locked herself away for so many years. And I guess that lesson was learned, wasn't it? That we need to see the monarch.
And it was interesting, one or two of the reflections that were made. I can still remember Ava Van, you know.
Me too.
And the fact that she almost flagellated herself that she didn't go for a week. She obviously thought about her role and obviously thought about how she could have done things better. And obviously the big example of that was coming to London at the time of Diana's death, where I think they also left it too long. And interestingly, although he got no thanks for it in the film, The Crown, the person who was most insistent that they came to London was the Duke of Edinburgh.
But I think the issue here, of course, was the fact that the monarchy had to evolve, because the reason they didn't come down was because of tradition. They were doing it the way things always had been done, in the same way that no flag was ever flown above Buckingham Palace other than the royal standard. The public didn't understand that, and the monarchy eventually caved into the public's desires, even though it broke
So
tradition.
tradition was changed.
So the monarchy of today isn't the monarchy of the 1990s, isn't the monarchy of the 70s or the 50s. That's been the greatest thing of the Queen's reign, is the monarchy's ability to survive and adapt. King Farouk of Egypt said one day there'll just be 5 monarchies left, for 5 kings left: kings of spades, hearts, diamonds, clubs, and the King of England. And it's because the monarchy has always been able to adapt, unlike, say, the French or the Russians or the Germans.
That's interesting. Look, thank you both. We're going to be speaking to you a little bit later on